Mother-in-law tried to poison me against my own husband. Her real motive was more twisted than I ever imagined. My name is Sarah, and this story changed my understanding of family relationships forever. What started as typical mother-in-law criticism turned into psychological warfare that nearly destroyed my marriage and my faith in people. The early warning signs. It all began innocently enough. Margaret, my husband David's mother, had always been a controlling woman, but I attributed it to her age and desire to protect her only son. The first few months after our wedding, she showered me with compliments, telling me what a good wife I was and how lucky David was to have me. But gradually, something shifted. At first, it was innocent remarks. "Sarah, dear, are you sure David really enjoys your cooking? He's such a gentle soul. He'd never tell you the truth to your face." You know, sweetheart, the men in our family are very secretive. David might smile at you while thinking something completely different. Initially, I brushed it off, but the seed of doubt had been planted. The escalation. 6 months in, the comments became more direct. Margaret started calling me when David wasn't home, her voice dripping with false concern. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I saw David at lunch yesterday with a young woman. They looked close. I'm probably reading too much into it, but as his mother, I noticed these things." My heart would race every time. When I'd confront David, he'd explain it was a colleague, showing me photos from the work event. But Margaret's voice would echo in my head. "He's such a good liar, just like his father was." The psychological assault intensified. She'd mentioned how David's ex-girlfriend, Emma, was the love of his life, and how he settled for marriage because Emma moved abroad. She'd show me old photos of them together, pointing out how genuinely happy he looked. "Not that he isn't happy with you, dear," she'd add with a smile that never reached her eyes. "It's just different." The breaking point. Things reached a crescendo during our first wedding anniversary. David had planned a romantic weekend getaway, but Margaret called with a family emergency that turned out to be a clogged drain. When David reluctantly stayed to help, she pulled me aside. "See how easily he chooses me over you? A real husband would have told his mother to call a plumber. But David, he's never really cut the apron strings, has he?" That night, I exploded at David. All of Margaret's poison spilled out, the accusations, the doubts, the constant comparisons to Emma. David looked devastated. "Sarah, where is this coming from? You're talking like you don't trust me at all." "Your mother says." "My mother says what exactly?" When I recounted the conversations, David's face went pale, then red with anger. "She told you what about Emma? That's completely insane, Sarah. Emma and I dated for 3 months in college. 3 months. And I've never had lunch with any colleague that she described." The investigation. David insisted we get to the bottom of this. He started paying attention to his mother's behavior, and what we discovered was chilling. Margaret had been systematically lying to both of us for months. She told David I complained about his family traditions, that I found his mother suffocating, and that I'd said I married him for stability, not love. None of it was true. But David had started pulling away, thinking I resented his family. We found out she'd been calling my workplace, pretending to be concerned about my emotional state and suggesting I might need professional help. She'd even contacted my sister, claiming David was worried about my mental health and asking if depression ran in our family. The twisted truth. The real revelation came when David's aunt visited from out of state. Over dinner, she casually mentioned how relieved the family was that Margaret had finally gotten over her unhealthy attachment to David. "What do you mean?" I asked, my blood running cold. "Oh, honey, you don't know?" Margaret was, well, let's just say she had a hard time when David moved out. She used to call him 5 times a day, show up at his apartment unannounced, even had keys made. We all thought she'd drive away any woman who came near him. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Margaret wasn't trying to break us up because she thought I was wrong for David. She was trying to isolate him, to make him dependent on her again. By poisoning me against him and him against me, she hoped to recreate the unhealthy dynamic they'd had before our marriage. When David lived alone, Margaret was his primary emotional support. She cooked for him, cleaned his apartment, managed his social calendar. Our marriage had given David independence she couldn't bear to lose. The confrontation. Armed with this knowledge, David confronted his mother. The mask finally slipped. "You don't understand what it's like," Margaret screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I raised him alone after his father left. He's all I have. That girl doesn't love him like I do. She doesn't know him like I do. She'll hurt him, and then what will I have left?" The raw pain in her voice was almost pitiable, but the damage had been done. Her love had become a prison, and she tried to make us both inmates. The healing process, recovery, wasn't easy. The trust between David and me had been severely damaged by months of manipulation. We went to couples therapy, where we learned to recognize the patterns Margaret had exploited. The therapist helped us understand that Margaret's behavior was a form of emotional abuse called triangulation, using a third party to create conflict and maintain control. David had to set firm boundaries with his mother. No more unannounced visits, no more private conversations with me about our relationship, and absolutely no more interference in our marriage. When Margaret violated these boundaries, David would temporarily cut contact. The hardest part was forgiving ourselves. I felt foolish for believing her lies, and David felt guilty for not protecting our marriage sooner. But we learned that manipulation works by exploiting normal human emotions: love, fear, insecurity, and that being vulnerable to it doesn't make us weak. The resolution. 2 years later, our marriage is stronger than ever. We've learned to communicate directly instead of through other people, and we've built walls around our relationship that no one can breach. Margaret and I have a cordial but distant relationship now. She attends family gatherings and behaves appropriately, but gone are the days of private phone calls and unsolicited advice. David maintains a relationship with his mother, but it's on his terms now. He's compassionate about her fear of abandonment while refusing to sacrifice his marriage to manage her emotions. The lesson. This experience taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love us most can inflict the deepest wounds. Margaret genuinely believed she was protecting her son, but her love had become possessive and toxic. She was willing to destroy his happiness to maintain her sense of control and importance. I learned that a healthy marriage requires boundaries, not just with outside threats, but with family members who can't accept that their role has changed. Love shouldn't require someone else's diminishment, and protection shouldn't come through deception and manipulation. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts while remaining open to my husband's perspective. When something feels wrong in a relationship, it's usually because something is wrong, even if it's not what you initially suspected. Margaret's twisted motive to reclaim her son by destroying his marriage ultimately failed because love built on truth is stronger than control built on lies. But it took nearly losing everything for us to understand that sometimes the call is coming from inside the house, and the person trying to save your marriage might be the one trying to destroy it. Today, David and I have a son of our own. As I watch him grow, I'm determined to love him in a way that prepares him to fly, not clips his wings. Because real love wants the beloved to be happy, even if that happiness exists outside the lover's control. The greatest victory over Margaret's manipulation wasn't cutting her out of our lives. It was building a marriage so strong that no outside force could break it. We learned that the best defense against those who would divide us is a partnership based on honesty, communication, and unwavering commitment to each other's well-being. In the end, Margaret's attempt to poison me against my husband only strengthened our bond. We emerged from her web of lies more united than ever, with a deeper understanding of what real love looks like and what it definitely does not.